I cannot believe that this tank is even good in World of Tanks after being in the game for so long and up against some of the newer, more overpowered tier 9 tanks. And this is of course the Object 432. We've got two replays that I'm going to showcase today, one of them being one of the most outrageous games that I've had and definitely surprised not just me but probably the enemy team as to how this tank even came out with the result that it did. And of course this tank is the tier 9 medium from the Soviet line that has the rear mounted turret and leads towards all of the tier 10 mediums, or at least a few of the kind of heavily armoured vehicles. Things like the Object 430U, the 430 and the K91 all come from this tank, which means that if you are wanting to get this tank, you can see on the tech tree line here it does get 3 tanks all coming from it, and so you have to play this tank quite a lot. And hopefully you guys, if you are deciding to pick up this vehicle, that you'll at least learn some things that you can use with this tank, what's good, what's bad, what you should and shouldn't do. And of course we can have a look at the loadout as to how you can set up the tank, and of course with some of the speed and stuff like that that you can improve with this vehicle. But first things first, what are the stats of the vehicle, since you know, you want to know whether or not it's going to be able to compete statistically, and then whether or not it's going to actually work in game as the stats say. So straight off the bat, this is a medium tank, so you'd be expecting high damage per minute, and this one definitely does not disappoint in that regard. 3,290 damage per minute. Now this isn't the base stats of the tank, so if you're not running it in the same way that I am, maybe you'd have some differences. It'd probably be about 2,800, and of course that's because we have advanced loader, and then if we were to assign a commander like you can see here, we are running the rapid loading as well, which increases the reload by 10%, so basically a 20% boost to the damage per minute, for those of you wondering how I managed to get the damage per minute up as high as it is. And that is pretty much something you should be doing on all of your vehicles if you have the opportunity to do so, since damage and outputting it is very much a necessity, at least in my eyes, for almost every single tank in the game, bar a few tanks that are the exception. But what else does this tank have other than obviously being able to deal with the damage? Well, it has of course got 300 and well, it's got 320 alpha, but the problem with this tank is that you get 2 guns, so you can use of course the stock one, which is essentially the same gun as the top one, but when you do use the stock one, penetration sucks. I'm not even gonna lie, it feels awful. But when you do get fully upgraded, you do have this 320 alpha. You also get better DPM, you get better accuracy and better penetration, so it's literally better in every single way. And also the rounds that you're going to be able to fire with the tank are also better, so there is literally nothing kind of better about the stock gun, as I'm sure you'd be, well, obviously it is a stock gun after all, but you have to wait quite a while to be able to unlock this gun. It is indeed the last upgrade, so have fun grinding out 100,000 with not being able to pen anything and basically having to fire premium rounds. But we played this during the event where you can essentially get extra XP, so we didn't have to play it all too much with the stock gun. So luckily, I mean, you guys are going to be in pain at the beginning. But 4 degrees of gun depression, it sucks. 4 degrees, not particularly great. Super annoying in some situations, but because the tank is quite low profile, it kind of helps, but at the same time it kind of hinders it as well, since small bumps, and because it's so long, this tank is a big long vehicle, means that if you do get any sort of bump at the front of the tank, it can be really horrible to try and get gun depression. So yeah, it can be a little bit inflexible in positions, but that's what you get for having the armor model of this vehicle. As you can see, it's fairly solid. I mean, this tank is not going to be able to, you know, bounce every single tank in the game. People with high penetration will go through the hull armor like paper. I mean, it is, for example, the same as any other tank in the game if people do have those high premium rounds, and that's exactly the same with this thing. But certainly if you're face hugging people, this tank is actually a nuisance, albeit people can pen the cupolas and they will aim for those when you are face hugging people, but it's still not an easy show, and you can quite easily bounce off of the cupolas as well, especially if you're swinging your turret, you're putting your gun in their barrel as well. You can also pick up a bounce from that, but either way, the armor model actually works quite well in that aggressive playstyle, and maybe we'll see that as the games start rolling in. But another thing with this tank is that we have run it with camo, because ultimately I feel like camo is one of the best things you can use on medium tanks if you want to up your gameplay and you've kind of learned all the tips and tricks, because yes, you can go with stabs, but the tank's accuracy is very good anyway. 0.29 accuracy, it's very good. You don't really have to worry about that, and although, you know, most of the time I would recommend it, on this tank not so much. And then of course with vents you could go with that as well. You know, I'd probably drop the advanced concealment if you wanted to. Coated optics is a must because the view range of this vehicle isn't crazy, since, you know, even with all of the boosts you could possibly put on this tank, 450 meters, which is still very good, but it isn't like top tier, like elite level view range. So yeah, definitely putting on coated optics is a play, so you can get some assistance damage as well as that actual damage as well. And then we gone with the camo so we can remain undetected and we can maneuver around the map using the 55 kilometers an hour. But, you know, for all intents and purposes, you can use basically anything you want. The one key thing that you want to be using is advanced loader, just for that increased damage per minute, which will make this tank so much better, and for locking down tracks, and we'll see that later on. But key things, you know, damage per minute, armor model is very good, flexibility pretty good, and when I first saw this tank I thought, oh, it's going to be a paper medium that's going to have low alpha, so it's not going to be particularly great in trading, and yeah, you're basically going to get farmed by most things, but that's not the case. And I guess let's jump into some gameplay where we can show off what this tank is actually capable of, and of course hopefully that's giving you an overview as to what sort of things you can use on this tank and the sort of playstyles you could use with the vehicle. Now then, the first game is indeed the best game that I've ever had in this vehicle, and it was one that I was very, very surprised about. We are of course playing up against tier 8s, tier 9s, and I'm not entirely sure if there's tier 10s in here, but I guess we'll find out as we're going through. But I was playing this during the XP with interest operation that was a while back, because I wanted to grind through and get as many tier 10s, and you can actually watch me doing this live. I mean, playing a ton of different tanks. We had some really good gameplays in the live stream as well that you can take a look at if you're interested, since we did play for about 5 hours. I think it was the longest stream that I've ever done, and we played through, you know, tons of tier 9s. I think we ended up getting about 5 tier 10s within the 5 hours, something like that, which was pretty crazy, and we were earning like 1 million XP in that entire stint, so crazy amounts of XP. But key thing that you've seen here, we take an early position up close and personal on this corner. We're not going to push around since I don't know what the TDs are or anything, but we get a nice little bit of early damage, 1200, and that's the sort of thing you want to be aiming for. These sorts of games where you can get into a nice position at the start, fighting against other mediums or light tanks is always a good one. But you can see here the problems with not having the best camo in the game, and also the gun depression, since we do have to expose the majority of our tank towards the opponents, and I'm getting spotted every time I try and kind of poke this ridge, and I think it's to do with this AMX 1392 just keeps detecting us. But because we pick that view range, it's going to help us spot him back, so every time we get spotted, the 1390 is going to be able to get hit, or at least get spotted in return, and hopefully we can hit him too. But one thing that you should always note when you are looking at playing something like the 432 within World of Tanks console is that you are really conserving those hit points, because in the late game this tank becomes super powerful. Almost think of it like a light tank. The longer you can stay alive, the better, because the DPM becomes much more imperative. You know, you can go up against some of these heavy tanks that YOLO in, and you can get some of that damage, as well as the fact that, you know, you don't have the most hit points in the game, 1700 at tier 9, meaning that you do not have the ability to just keep on kind of sitting and taking shots, and definitely don't want to be trading with heavy tanks in this game. But unfortunately we don't manage to finish off the Waffle Panzer IV. In hindsight I would have loaded HE so we could have penned the Waffle in the turret and removed him from the game, since we wouldn't want to get hit by that thing, because we'd lose about a quarter of our hit points. But you can see here Centurion comes around the corner, and when you think about it, the tier 8 Centurion has less alpha than we do, and we probably reload quicker than the Centurion. Now there's a Conqueror here as well, so Granted, I probably shouldn't have poked that. That's a misplay, but at the same time I was just trying to get some damage. And I wasn't sure whether we were going to steamroll the opponents. Yeah, I just wanted a little bit of extra damage. Got greedy, ended up getting punished. There's a surprise. But so far, 2,500 damage. I'm thinking it's going to be a steamroll. So I tried to go in, and then we started losing and hemorrhaging all of the tanks on the kind of southern side of the map. And so instead, I try and push this side. If we push this side, we can hopefully single out this Conqueror. He's not going to be able to get hulled down. That's exactly what we want. I'm just a little bit hesitant to YOLO him, since, you know, if we misplay it or we make some mistakes, we can get punished quite hard. Now, we are firing heat in this thing, probably because I was just going for marks and I wanted the best games possible. So yes, you can call me a gold spammer, whatever you want to do. It doesn't bother me, since I was just trying to get as much XP as possible, and it definitely does help when you do that. So managed to pick up a nice little tracking shot on the Conqueror, getting us a little bit of assistance on top of the actual damage. And now I'm kind of worried about artillery. Luckily he went for someone else, so it's nice to see me not getting targeted by artillery for once. So we now push up into the bushes over here, and hopefully then we can spot for the team if the Panzerjäger, who's basically got better view range and more camo than we do, doesn't already spot him if he is loading up with all of the camo and crew skills that come with that. Now the IS-6 Black, obviously a little bit of a clubber. At least if he hits us 390, we're not going to be able to out-trade him, and when he's got low hit points, it's not going to be worth the trade unless we can easily finish him off. But we see that the AMX 1390 for some reason is out in the open. We then, of course, because we're loading heat, managed to only damage the tracks, and then we're going for another one. We do manage to hit him and we actually track him, and this is what the heat is good for in this vehicle. Is not only does it do significant amounts of damage, but it can also track as well. Although, you know, you have to be a little bit careful because sometimes it can only track rather than do damage, like you'd see with some of the APCR rounds in the game. Now we're going for this PTA fully aim. Make sure that you do fully aim with this tank, since yeah, you definitely don't want to be flicking onto people all the time, but the accuracy is very good. The dispersion when moving on this tank is really good, so how much the reticle will bloom out or become inaccurate when you're moving, it's very good with this tank, as I say. And even if you put vert stabs on this thing, it's going to get unbelievably good. So yeah, you won't really have a problem with accuracy, and that really makes this tank once again more flexible, but still not the most flexible tank in the game. But we see that the Leopard PTA is kind of YOLOing our Panzerjäger here, so I'm going to go and try and help him out. The Leopard PTA has enough alpha to finish off the Panzerjäger in one shot. It's a bit unfortunate that we couldn't get there forward. Maybe I should have thought about it earlier and helped him out, and then the Panzerjäger would have been able to not take a shell, or at least he could have helped us out against his PTA. But here you go. This is the what happens when you get up close and personal. You know, they just end up bouncing because they cannot get the gun depression to hit down onto the actual upper plate, and they actually hit this kind of even more angled upper plate that you can see where this round has managed to hit. And that is really where the kind of face-hugging aspect of this tank comes in really, really well. And that's how we've been able to pick up 4,600 damage, pick up a little bit of assistance as well, so we're up to 5,700 combined damage, which is perfect, exactly what you want with this vehicle. And now it's time to kind of push forward, see where this artillery is. We don't want to throw ourselves away. I've only got 640 hit points. There's a medium and a light tank on the enemy team. Wasn't sure whether it's a 1390 or an autoloader. I do a quick check. It is indeed an autoloader, so he can finish us off in a clip if he manages to get around the side of us. So yeah, definitely want to be wary of what this AMX 1390 is going to do. But you can see that there is a waffle in the base, for some reason still not moving up, even though the 1390 is over this side, and of course the artillery and of course the medium tank as well is over this side. So yeah, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't move up more, but either way we're going after this 1390. And so instead of going up on the left hand side, because I know that artillery could be sat in like F1 or like E1, and they most certainly could be in C1, then I want to make sure that I can't get hit from multiple different angles. So we just remain calm, and we go over this side, which allows us to at least expose just one aspect of the tank. Now the 1390, He's trying to push around the side of us, but we have decent enough hull traverse that if we preemptively move, we're going to be able to deal with him. And then the Su-14-2 is indeed up here. He manages to hit us, so I'm glad we didn't actually manage to pen. But now we're going after him, and we can hopefully land a few shells into him. We managed to get one. And then can we manage to get the second shot? Yes, we do. We managed to hit the Su-14-2 there, track him and keep him locked in place, and then finish him off with the final shell. 5,955 damage, but there is still an Object 430-2 who hasn't been spotted yet. So I'm a little bit scared as to where this guy can be. I want to be a little bit careful when crossing here. He might be pre-aiming us, and of course he's with having picked up nearly well, over 7,000 combined damage. Pretty good. So I decide that hopefully our teammates are actually going to push up with us. I don't want to push on my own into a tank that can one-shot me, so hopefully, fingers crossed, they'll move, but apparently not. I don't know where this waffle is thinking that the tank is going to be, but I pinged to the help. Our artillery is now coming in, because you know when artillery is the furthest forward tank on your team, you know something's gone wrong. But we do indeed spot the enemy 430-2, and guess what? Oh yes, the result that you always want to find, and it is an AFK 430-2, and of course on full health as well. So yeah, just basically farm city at this point, and we're going to plow multiple rounds into him, and you can see here the damage per minute that you can deal. We're basically full healthing a 430 within what, like 30 seconds of hitting him with the first shell. I mean, it's not necessarily difficult when you're firing at the side of a tank that's AFK, but still managing to pick up 7,655 damage with 1,000 assists as well. So yeah, for 2,171 base experience, so a good game, and 5 enemies taken out as well. So really, really good one there. And hopefully that gave you an idea as to how this tank plays, and we managed to pick up 45,000 XP in that game. And I don't believe that we were actually fully upgraded at this point, as you can see. So yeah, really, really nice to see. And I think we actually didn't even have the top gun. So that shows you that even when you have that bottom tier gun, that you can definitely perform well if you do fire the premium. But it's not the only reason. Of course, you have to play well and get into positions that are good for the tank. But let's jump into the next gameplay, which is just as good, but a little bit of something different. So our next replay is on Muravanka, and this is a map that is very, very strange for the 432, because it usually requires gun depression, but you have 4 degrees with this tank, so you don't really have that option. So you have to play it in a different way to what you would usually play your vehicles with when you do play this map, which is why I'm trying to go over to the right hand side. But instead I actually decide that it's probably not the best idea either over there, since you can get crossfired from the enemy's hill area, and we're probably not going to be able to pen the turret. So instead we try and get some early damage on some of the boys that have overcommitted in the centre of the map, things like this TVP and the Progetto that are moving up, and hopefully we can remain undetected. And especially if you stop with this tank and aim and fire, you can increase that camo rating, which is something you should be doing when you are playing with this thing. Now we do manage to hit one vehicle, but with only doing 300 damage, yeah, it's definitely not going to save us in the early game. But the Link 6x6, don't quite know why he's YOLO'd, but he has. And maybe we can get one more into him. Yes, we can. There we go. Picking up some easy early damage game. So nice to see. And of course the TVP T5051 has also sat out in the open, so some nice squishy targets at the beginning. And this is exactly what you want with this tank. And with the TVP T5051 cresting that ridgeline, we can quite easily crest over. It's going to be a slim shot, since the hull armor is actually quite small. It doesn't necessarily mean the worst thing when you do crest a ridge. Obviously you want to be making sure that you're checking the reloads of opponents before you fire, because or pull over the ridge, because you know you don't want to risk it if you don't need to. So yeah, just making sure that you do be very opportunistic when you do try and poke, because if they do hit you, they're probably going to pen you, especially when you're exposing that lower plate as you crest that ridge. So just be careful when you do move with this tank, or any of the tank line. I mean the 430, or the 416, the tier 8 is also very similar, in fact much worse in my opinion. The armor does not work in that vehicle anywhere near this tank. So yeah, just be very careful with that one. But if you have managed to get to this and you're thinking, maybe the K91 will be a good one, there'll be a review coming soon of the K91 along with the 430 and the 430U as we play them for the first time on this account. So it'll be an interesting one to give you an idea as to the different types of tanks, and maybe we'll put it into one video where we look at all three, and maybe we'll get some gameplay and do videos on each one and then do a comparison video afterwards, which might be interesting for you guys. So yeah, it'd be an interesting one to show the best replays that we managed to get on from all of them, and then give you some tips with regards to the Soviet tech tree mediums, including the Object 140. Maybe we'll drop those in that video as well. So just stay tuned, and of course you can do that if you are subscribed, or if you aren't, maybe you want to just check back in about a week or so, and hopefully we'll have all of that done for you, and that'll be an interesting one to see, especially from my point of view. I mean, even if it's just me that enjoys watching it, it'll be nice to see which ones are actually good in today's meta, considering there are like 5 Soviet mediums at tier 10 that are tech tree. So yeah, which one is actually the best one, and maybe it will change my view on what we actually rated them in the tech tree review for the Soviet tanks in general. We've actually been doing a series on the channel where we're looking at all of the different tech tree vehicles within the game, and hopefully we'll join those all into one massive video where we can see every single review of all of the tanks from tier 5 upwards for all of the tech tree lines. So you'll be able to literally go to one video and have every single tank above tier 5, including premiums, but that's going to be a huge video, so I'll probably break it down into multiple ones, so low tier premiums and then higher tier premiums, or mid-tier premiums, you know, 6 and 7s, etc. But yeah, it'll be an interesting one. I'm definitely looking forward to it, and hopefully you two are. But so far this game, it's going as you'd expect when you do lose the forest area, or at least haven't pushed the forest area, or at least getting a side shots into the people who are pushing that dip in F3 and 4 and E3 and 4. We do manage to get some really opportunistic shots into things like the 268 version 4. You can see me here just trying to blind fire it. And this time we're actually fully upgraded, so we don't need that premium ammunition anywhere near as much as we did at the beginning, because, you know, when you have got AP that has 200 pen, it's not fun. But we do finish off this TVP T5051, which is nice, and that brings us over 3,700 combined damage. So not a bad game. You'd probably stay on average around about where you need to be if you're at about 90% on your marks of excellence, for you guys interested in that. I mean, I'm not going to go for marks of excellence on this vehicle. I just simply don't have time to go for marks on many vehicles in the game right now, since I'm just trying to get as many of the tier 10s as possible on the account. But you can see here we've picked up a little bit of extra damage, and when people do push on this side, you can use this position here. There's a ridge line in front of me, which is nice. For some reason the Rhinoceronte is actually firing HE. Yeah, brilliant idea that is. Brilliant for us, maybe not for him. But you can see me waiting here, just try and get that shot on the tracks. And if you can do this, you can re-track opponents. It's not fun for them. The Rhinoceronte here really suffering because of the reload in this vehicle is just very, very good. And that allows us to finish him off blind, because of course he's not going to be able to repair his track once we've already taken it off and he's repaired it, or at least isn't going to be able to do it unless he's running 2 repair kits, which is something I would never ever recommend in the game, but some people do, you never know. But luckily we do manage to take him out of the game, and the game is not looking all too good right now. I mean, they've taken basically all of the map, and our friendly teammates are basically sat in the similar sort of area. I haven't moved that much, and yeah, it's definitely not the best, but at the same time I'm now trying to move in. There's a Projectile 65 over here, and hopefully we can deal a shot of damage into him. We do go for him. The artillery actually misses our teammate there, so that's nice. And now it's just hopefully we can get this Projectile out of the game. We go over the ridgeline. Hopefully we'll be able to deal with this guy. Maybe he does have the potential to remove us from full health if he does manage to land that hit, but luckily for us, he doesn't want to overcommit. Maybe we will. Maybe I'm getting impatient at this point. I'm hoping someone will actually do something, and usually it's the person who pushes up first that ends up getting actually destroyed. But yeah, it's apparently me who tries to turn around and leave. You can see I was a bit annoyed considering the clutchness of this game, but we did actually manage to win, even though it was a nail-biting one. In fact, I don't think we did win at the end of it. I think the artilleries just ended up not being able to take each other out, and then I think we lost on hit points. So yeah, brilliant one. If I'd literally not been taken out by the arty, we would have been able to be fine, but unfortunately it didn't go our way, and we end up with a loss. But still a good game. We managed to pick up, what, like 6,000 combined damage, which is a good one in this tank, and we certainly had better games, and I'll actually leave a link to the live stream where you can see us play this tank on stream live, no filter, both the good and bad games in this tank, which might be an interesting one for you, along with some of the other tier 9s that we had at the time, including things like the Batchat, I believe. I think we had just loads of the German tanks, things leading up to the E50M. So there's the E50 video coming soon, which is the tier 9 German medium, so stay tuned for all of that. And hopefully you did enjoy this video about one of the tanks that I genuinely thought would never be good in today's meta, but it definitely was really good and fun one. And yeah, hopefully you guys did enjoy. But let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.